lot of people really don't understand that all marriage is a contract with the state. You want to believe that it's some sort of simply religious ceremony. It never has been that, and it never will be that. It is a violent intercessor between the relationship between a man and a woman. That's all marriage is and ever has been. Whether it was originally intended to be something else or not, that's what it is today. That's what it is right now, in the present moment, here on planet Earth. Once again, this is not beating up on females. This is an expose and an analysis of social engineering that is geared toward females and why women have to get their head out of this satanic cage. And this is what people have a problem with because they've made this their identity. They've made this the thing that they believe is true no matter what. And it's not. It's just another way to deceive and enslave you. Last week, we left off talking about how the modern, conditioned, inauthentic woman, that all of the social engineering and mind control techniques that we're talking about in this particular presentation are geared toward and are directed at. And one of them is to get them to really identify as part of their personality with the state, with government, with the type of authoritarian control that government represents. So I call this state unholy matrimony. The marriage that is taking place today is not largely between men and women. It is largely between women and the state. The state acts and is acting as the proxy husband in this psychological dynamic between themselves and women. So the conditioned woman is being engineered, socially engineered, to love the state for the very small perks that they are often given by it. On a subconscious level, they have bought into the state as the protective father figure, largely of themselves, because they believe that human society would simply degenerate into violence and chaos without the so-called protective father figure, psychological proxy of the state. This, of course, is actually an expression of what has been psychologically shown to be parental abandonment issues. The inauthentic and conditioned women who are brainwashed by this type of social engineering identify the state as the fatherly proxy figure, often when there have been real parental abandonment issues in their relationship, specifically with their father, not necessarily just one parent, could be both parents. And parental abandonment issues, I want to reemphasize, do not have to be physical ones, meaning actual physical absence of presence of the parental being. They can be absences psychologically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, in providing of needs for the child. If any of those elements and characteristics of the parent-to-child relationship are absent, that is a parental abandonment issue. So keep in mind, whenever I say parental abandonment issues, this does not have to mean that the parent is physically not present. They could be present. Both parents could be present, and the child still have parental abandonment issues because the parent is not providing what the child needs in a particular psychological, mental, spiritual, or emotional aspect. Emotional, spiritual, and sexual connections between men and women are being continuously eroded and eventually being worked toward eradication by the state. The state continually positions itself to be psychologically accepted as the quote provider, the quote unquote protector, and the quote unquote husband in this psychological proxy relationship between itself and women. What I call unholy matrimony. The vast majority of women in our society will not speak out against the state for these very reasons. And at any political rally, there are sometimes a decent split or breakdown, but I have particularly noticed that women are far more enraptured by the state and by politicians than even are men. It's probably about a 60-40 split. Sometimes it's more prevalent with a 70-30 split, but if you even go to political rallies, you will notice that it is always at least somewhat skewed toward the female percentage in attendance. I would say that this is one of the actual social engineering operations being waged upon women for that very reason. They are trying to reel specifically biological females into identification with politics and the state because they know that then that propagates directly into the familial connections, the familial dynamic, as I call it, and the family unit itself. And that's what they want. They want their hooks in that to eventually weaken and break down the familial and family bond. Then they have everybody in the exact same trap, in the exact same prison of the mind, and eventually moving toward physical enslavement. That's the technique that is being used against women to get them to identify with the state and why that is. Another aspect of deep connection to the state and having the state's hooks inside you is the institution called marriage. And a lot of people really don't understand that all marriage is a contract with the state. That's why women in today's society seek it so much. They want the family dynamic that they wish to enter into formalized and verified and bonded by the state. They don't want it to be a direct one-to-one relationship with the man. They wish for the violence of the state to be interjected into their personal relationship so that they can extract resources if that becomes necessary to them. And again, men go along with this because they want the perks and rewards that come as they perceive it with the relationship with any particular woman that they seem to become enamored with at any time during their lives. This institution is simply a contract with the state. It is not a two-way relationship. It becomes a three-way triangle of a relationship between the man, the woman, and the state. People who think that marriage is anything other than that are delusional. You don't understand what the institution is. You have a completely erroneous perception of what it is. You want to believe that it's some sort of simply religious ceremony. It never has been that, and it never will be that. So the formal institution of marriage is often favored by the conditioned woman, since it brings a personal relationship into union with the violence of the state, as I just described. This union with the violence of the state has been traditionally used and steered to the benefit of the female, especially when a marriage ends in a divorce. The violence of the state entering into union with that has traditionally been seen by the conditioned female as a benefit that they receive, because if things don't go well in the relationship or the marriage, they can then use the state apparatus of violence to extract whatever resources they see fit and use the state's violence to do that, whereas they would not be able to do that on their own because most women would not engage in that type of coercion and violence. Number one, more likely than not, because they simply would not have the physical prowess to do something like that. So this is why the state is loved by the modern conditioned female. It acts as their ability to perform violence. Again, people can disagree with that all they want. I've said it and put out the truth of the matter in a respectable way where I know it to be true, and anybody who really truly understands the institution called marriage knows that to be true. Anybody who really understands what it is and isn't mind controlled by the types of fanciful and romantic delusions and euphemisms that are brought into play when it comes to marriage. It is a violent intercessor between the relationship between a man and a woman. That's all marriage is and ever has been. So for the people that want to fall for that, go ahead and see it as some romantic, lovely design of some kind, when it is in fact bringing the violence of the state into a relationship. And that is exactly what Satanism wants to do. It wants to have its hooks in everything. This is part of the whole satanic agenda. This is part of inversion of everything. This is part of the injection of violence into everything. This desire to bring violence into the relationship by the state, desired by women, is especially true when a marriage ends in divorce. Over 80% of all divorces are initiated by women, mostly because real-world men don't live up to their programmed expectations. See, all of the psychological and social engineering is geared toward women to get them to see no man is good enough. Men are not good enough. Men are not worthy. And then when they do settle down into a relationship with a man, it's like everything has to be a state of perfection. Everything has to be exactly according to the expectations built up mentally, in the mind, in the psyche, largely because of the social conditioning that the conditioned female has received. Almost all real-world men will not live up to that built-up social programmed expectations. Between 95 and 96% of all divorce cases are ruled in favor of the woman. 8 out of 10 women initiated those proceedings in courts. And once again, if you don't think this is the case, go and research it, go and study it. Try to take your head from out up your ass and try to really understand what's really going on here. Once again, this is not beating up on females. This is an expose and an analysis of social engineering that is geared toward females and why women have to get their head out of this satanic cage. This is a cage for the mind. And this is what people have a problem with because they've made this their identity. They've made this the thing that they believe is true no matter what. And it's not. It's just another way to deceive and enslave you. That's all it ever has been. That's all it ever will be. You can get as butthurt and offended about that as you want. What I'm saying is still going to be true. Once again, I will tell you when I'm conjecturing about something. I will tell you when I have definitively and accurately identified the facts of the matter, vetted by the trivium method of truth discovery, and then I'm simply putting that analysis and those findings out there as facts. This presentation does not contain conjecture. This is fact-based as vetted and verified by the trivium method. Think about it however you want. What I'm putting out here is still the truth, and if you don't think so, you're wrong. And that's what we have to start saying to people. We have to start outwardly telling people, you are under mind control. You have been taught this to latch onto it as your identity and to let that be a prison for your consciousness. Unto the death, my mind is staying right here, even though it's never done anything good for you. It's never accomplished a thing. It's always created more division. It's always created more chaos. It's always created more death and destruction. And people can't come out of it because what Satanism ultimately is, and that's what this presentation all comes back down to, these are aspects of Satanism, aspects of the satanic mindset. It all comes back to people not being able to say the most powerful magical phrase that has ever been uttered in the universe. Again, this is not the lost word. This is the lost phrase. There's the lost word, which is no. We don't want to say no to evil. We have to take our power back through the word no by not complying, by saying no to evil no matter what it offers us. That's part of this. We have to say the most powerful phrase, I was wrong. That's the one you hardly ever hear, and it has become lost to our civilization and specifically to Western satanized culture. The people out there listening saying, Mark, you can't be right about that. That's not what marriage really is. Well, guess what? Whether it was originally intended to be something else or not, that's what it is today, boys and girls. That's what it is right now, in the present moment, here on planet Earth. And if you don't think so, once again, you better learn the lost phrase, because you're wrong. And you don't want to admit it, because it's wrapped up in your identity. Your mind control is showing. You better get rid of it, because it's not serving you. It's not serving what you say you want to do. It's not serving the cause of human freedom. It's not serving truth. It certainly isn't serving anything you say you want. We say we want these things, then we do the exact opposite. We latch onto the exact opposite idea, psychologically and conceptually. And then we wonder why we don't get what we say we want. We don't even understand the requirements for getting the things we say we want. We don't know the real law of attraction. So, divorce courts rule in favor of women over 95% of the time, and people still believe this institution is somehow a good thing. Divorce rates will predictably continue to rise astronomically as long as conditioned women remain attached to the types of unrealistic cultural expectations they have regarding relationships. Completely unrealistic expectations that are culturally, socially engineered into their minds. These expectations are part of the quote-unquote no man is good enough for me princess programming, because you got to make a couple million a year, you got to pamper the female, they have to basically do hardly any real true work and be taken care of like a daddy would spoil a daughter infected with princess programming. This is part of not wanting to psychologically truly grow up and truly mature in a psychological, emotional, and ultimately spiritual capacity. Money and the maintenance of lifestyle is almost always valued above emotions, feelings, and moral issues in almost all modern relationships. It's a situational deal. That's what most of the time not only relationships are, but significant chunk of the time that's what marriage is about. Marriages are situations of convenience for either one partner or often both. It's a convenience situation, not something that is truly desired and shared emotionally, spiritually, and especially morally on the part of both participants. That's the problem. That leads to the problem of why do we have such shit parents in the world that aren't teaching children morals, that aren't teaching them true values, that aren't teaching them principles, that aren't teaching them natural law, that aren't teaching them objective morality. They're not teaching them not to become an agent of the state or government at all, or not to believe in authority. No, we have crap for parents because this is what people believe a relationship to be. Then you look at divorce and see how it completely separates children from a masculine figure in their lives, teaching half of society that masculinity is toxic and then projecting that down into the children when children are often separated from their father, and almost always family courts rule in favor of women. Well over 95% of the time. That's why so many children grow up fatherless with no masculine influence in their lives, and that's what this satanic neo-feminism agenda is all geared to do and serve. It is geared to get the children away from any masculine influence, and it's geared to get them cucked to the state because they won't say no because they don't have that sacred masculine dynamic within them. Certainly the father's not instilling any aspect of that, whether he even knows it himself, which is unlikely because the same thing's been done by his parents to him. Even if he does, he's separated from the children. Full custody is often, most of the time, given to the woman. See, this is why, first of all, so many marriages end like this because people don't even understand what a true relationship is. And once again, I emphasized this a couple of years ago on What on Earth is Happening, and again, I don't think people still understand it. A true relationship is not a one-to-one linear dynamic between two people, regardless of their biological gender. It is also a triangle. As a matter of fact, I'm going to draw this for people. This is what most people believe a relationship to be. They think it's a one-on-one dynamic, a one-on-one energy flow between a man and a woman, a man and a man, a woman and a woman, doesn't matter. That is not a true, genuine, lasting relationship. Not. This is an illusion and a delusion. There's no such thing as a direct one-to-one true relationship. You can use the word relationship, but it's dysfunctional. And it's always going to be dysfunctional, no matter what you believe. If there is only this connection, and first and foremost, you have not put first things first. You have not created a one-to-one connection at the individuated level to principles and truth, then no other relationship bond can truly be formed between any other individual and that first individual, the self. So now this one individual has formulated that relationship. This person then even attempts to make a connection to this person. And they have not first and foremost created their own connection to source, truth, principles, morality, etc. That relationship is also completely dysfunctional and can never really truly work. It's still a delusional attempt at a real relationship. There has to be a direct connection first between ultimate guiding principles and each individual in the relationship. If there's 5 people in the relationship, you have to have 5 direct connections to source, truth, principles, morality first. If there's 100, you gotta have 100 connections there first. Everything has to go back to guiding principles first. That's why they're called principles. The word principle in the English language is etymologically derived from the Latin noun principia, which is plural. It means the first things, the chief things, the most important things, the things that must be put first. If principles are not put first, every subsequent relationship is dysfunctional. No matter what you believe, what you think, it doesn't matter. The individual bond to source, truth, principles, and morality must come first. This is the absolute hallmark of what is known as a genuine relationship. Again, the topic that we're on is marriage, divorce, and divorce courts. and specifically the violence of the state being interjected into the relationship. Now, you can call all of this anything you want to call it, but it really ultimately comes down to a one-on-one relationship to the Creator. Call this whatever you want to call it. You can call it source. You can call it the underlying intelligence of the universe. Doesn't matter what you call it. This circle here represents the Creator of the universe. It represents all of the laws of the universe. It represents the genuine power inherent to nature. Call it nature if you want. This is God, nature, Creator. That is the relationship model. If you don't form this relationship first, by any name you want to call it, the relationship is doomed to be dysfunctional in the future. What does the state want to do? And maybe the people who have truly been listening and are good students have already figured it out. The state wants all of this wiped out. There's really no individuated bond to source or truth. And this I'm going to call the satanic relationship. And almost all people in the world are locked into this relationship through the institution called marriage. The state wants each individual bonded to it, because what has it just usurped the place of? It has just usurped the place of God. They want the bond between the individual forged to the state instead of to God, instead of to the Creator, instead of to nature, instead of to the laws of the universe, instead of to truth, instead of to principles, instead of to morality. This is an actual bond that is a individual satanic bond, as is this one. They are the same. And those will be forged, and then there will be this completely dysfunctional relationship. That is the satanic relationship that is forged by the neo-feminism and satanic epi-eugenics agenda. That's part of the unholy feminine that the conditioned woman seeks, the conditioned woman wants, the conditioned woman wants to continue to happen because it bonds everybody involved in the relationship to the violence of the state, which the conditioned woman subconsciously desires. They won't recognize it as violence because they don't understand that's all the state ever is and does and can do. So I hope I've made it clear what a real relationship is versus what the relationship brought on by the institution called marriage actually is. And the key thing to keep in mind there is there's no genuine connection to the source, to truth, to principles, to morality. Instead, that has been usurped, satanically inverted, and replaced by the state, by government, by authority, by slavery. You better get it pretty quick. And you better spread it pretty quick, because we're in a lot of trouble, boys and girls. A lot of trouble. And we're in even deeper trouble because people still believe this nonsense. They still believe this is necessary, and they still believe that this is some kind of an illusion or something that doesn't exist. This is not necessary. This is buying into evil. This is buying into control. This is accepting violence as justifiable and morally legitimate. There's nothing good about this. This is the state usurping the place of God in people's lives. This is a genuine relationship. Get it clear in your own mind. Money and the maintenance of lifestyle is almost always valued above emotions, feelings, and moral issues in modern relationships. Such a system is institutionally structured to break down the strength of both genders and therefore negatively impact future generations. Once again, because the children are going to be separated from the masculine, fatherly influence in their lives, even if the parent provides that dynamic, the male provides that dynamic, and then they're going to be raised by conditioned women who see the state as the husband at that point forward. And they thought that before. That's why they want to lock the man into the contract with the state, which is implied violence. But then certainly after the divorce, after that follows, then they are really seeing the state who could be providing assistance, who could be negotiating the entire divorce, etc. They're seeing that as daddy. They're seeing that as the father figure, the proxy husband and father of the relationship.